Welcome back to Mind Over Masculinity. I'm your host Sayan, and today we are getting into something that sounds soft, but is actually a straight up power skill. Because here's the truth, guys: a lot of men are leading with pressure, performance, and pride, and then wondering why they're exhausted or one bad week away from snapping. So today's topic is a bit of a plot twist because today we are discussing about self-compassion as a culture-shaping leadership skill. Not self-compassion as a spa day or not self-compassion as an excuse. It is a thing that makes you dangerously steady in hard moments. The kind of steadiness that changes teams, workplaces, families. My guest today is Dalida Turkovich. She's a leadership and mindfulness expert with 30 plus years in the game and ICF certified coach, a certified mindful self compassion teacher, and a trauma informed practitioner. She's supported leaders and teams, including Fortune 500 environments. She has also designed ICF accredited programs and she now trains coaches to bring compassion in a way that actually lands in the real world. So, Dalida, it's an absolute honor to have you here with me today. And I'm very excited to have this conversation with you.
Thank you, Sayan. Likewise, I'm really honored to be here.
Yeah, and so before we jump in, I want to name something quickly. I think most people have felt, but don't know usually where to connect with leadership, right? You know, that moment in a meeting where someone says, "We are all aligned," right? And everyone nods in, but I mean, you're not on the same page exactly, right? And nothing dramatic happens, but your body clocks something. So that's the stuff I want to talk about today because I think leadership isn't just about strategy or decision. So, the leader from your experience, when people hear about self compassion, I think they often imagine softness, but you're calling it as a leadership skills. That shape cultures and people around you. So, what do you exactly mean by that?
Yeah. Well, it's true. There are many, we call them misgivings of self compassion. And naturally, we call self compassion at the time when we are going through some difficulties. And that softness indeed is the part of the practice. But it does have the other side. We call it fierce self-compassion, and it also has a soft and a hard element to it. It's definitely not weakness. It actually, through self-compassionate presence, we come to the inner strength that helps us to move forward. There is so much research done related to self-compassion and the impact on motivation, productivity, mental health, relational quality, and so on. And when it comes to leadership, I also know, there is this element that we often want to point out that things that are not working well, and maybe think that criticism is going to provide a change and motivation to do things better. But unlike criticism, uh, compassion invites us to see our own humanity in what is happening, and through that to soften the sense of resistance to what is going on. And from there we actually come to the space of self-awareness and motivation to make some changes that are necessary. And of course, so there is self-compassion and compassion, so there is a little bit an element
Mm.
of a, as you say, plot twist there as well. Without self-compassion, compassion can't be there either. And specifically, how it is, the role it plays with leadership is that especially younger generations are really calling for empathy, for presence, for that kind of like the container of feeling safe when we don't know how to do things or when we make mistakes. And when leaders provide that container of psychological safety for the team, and there is a shift in the way how mistakes are being perceived. And also, there is a desire to do better, to maybe explore different ways of doing things. So that is that element. But and then leaders need to start from themselves. So that's where the self-compassion is really important. Unless we manage to dissolve that inner criticism, we don't really know about the impact that compassion can have on others. So we first learn how to give it to ourselves, basically. So
Mm,
the short answer would be indeed, there is a soft element, warmth, care, kindness, softness, but also there is the hard element, and the hard element is the motivation to provide, to
mm,
protect, to motivate, to act out of that space when we dissolve some form of inner suffering, let's say.
mm. Yeah, it's interesting because I've heard a lot of people actually use these two terms, compassion and self-compassion, very interchangeably. But your perspective, I think it reframes what that misconception is, because when you have that element of self compassion, right, it's like nobody says anything wrong, but somehow everyone's what's the word, um energy are up, right? I mean, people choose their words more carefully. And honestly, I've been in meetings like that where I leave thinking, why am I exhausted? Because we barely did anything. So I want to talk about that everyday stuff. Since I know a lot of men are trained to motivate themselves through criticism. Like, if I'm not hard on myself, I'll just get lazy. That kind of mindset. So I just want to tap into the perspective that why do you think that's a trap?
It is a trap because it's perhaps the old way of thinking and education that we got. I mean, first for men, and really honored that I can be here and speak for men from the perspective of a woman, but also as an executive coach who worked with hundreds of men who were really struggling with dissolving that self-criticism. And through the talks, one of the questions that I ask would be that voice of the inner critic. Whose voice is it? And most often, the voice would be from parents, mother, father, who used to criticize a child for making things wrong, so to doing
Yeah.
wrong things. And perhaps at that time, we could call it a childlike perspective. I want to play. I don't want to study, right? And so the parents are there and kind of like saying you should do differently. And somehow we realize that that gives results. And as a child, as children, we learn how to continue to use the same voice to motivate ourselves. And that becomes unconscious pattern, autopilot, we may call it. But then that kind of perspective takes us to a certain limit where it just continues to burns us, right? And so criticism, even if the environment is very supportive, we continue to criticize ourselves, and someone sometimes can't even receive a praise. They would think, unless I hear criticism, I will not do anything well. So in my work with leaders, I actually help them to first notice the quality of that voice, to thank that voice for helping them to go through the childhood and like find different mechanisms how to work with that, and then
Yeah.
to establish a different voice, which is the voice of self-compassion, and then notice what is different. And most often there is a really big aha moment of realizing, oh wow, so my body responds completely differently, or I'm really motivated to now go and do things in a different way. So there's definitely an element of surprise that comes from utilizing the new voice. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this stuff that you talk about, Dalida, which is, sort of burnout, which is very true. I have seen this with my friends personally, and I want to get into the practical side of that. So let's make this real. When you are in that kind of situation, say a deadline slips, right? Or somebody messes up in a team, or someone is just disappointed. What does that moment exactly look like if you follow this protocol of what you just shared, of what self-compassion should actually look like?
Well, again, I think that first of all, it's really important what is the moment when we notice that compassion or self compassion is not there, that we actually go into the other mode. There is a sense of overthinking, rumination, right? Our body hardens. There's maybe some part of the body that feels really stiff. We feel very critical towards others as well, and loss of patience, tolerance, right? And that would be the first sign that self compassion is needed. So the way that it works is to notice where is the strongest stimulation, right? Is it my mind that is agitated? What kind of thoughts are coming up? And then often in mindfulness, we say we come to a place of stillness, right? Like we pause. So we pause not to stop thinking, but we pause so that we can be actually a little bit more aware what kind of thinking is present. And then, so self compassion has three elements, or mindful self compassion has three elements. Mindfulness means awareness of what is present, right? So it's almost like we put a light on the part that is really activated. So if it is mind or if it's part of the body that is feeling more tensed, um, or emotion that is arising, again, feeling irritated or angry, and so on. And so that is mindfulness, awareness of what is present. The second element is common humanity. So often we feel that we are the only ones who make these kind of mistakes. So the criticism would be, oh, how stupid of me. I should have known. Any other person in my place would actually do better, or they would know how to do better, right? So common humanity means recognizing, like, hey, the mistake that I made this is human. Not only that these things happen to other people, but also the response that I'm having is also really sign of my humanity. And then the third part is softening, right? And the softening can be um, through just changing the tone of voice, right? Like, so inner critic can be very metal voice, and kind of like saying things like that. You're judging, like you're stupid, or like why, like sometimes even, hey, you're idiot, right? Like really harsh words. And then changing that, and maybe using your own name and softening the voice and saying like, hey, ouch, this hurts. All right, like, oof, like I didn't want it to make for these things to happen that way. Another way is to offer a soothing touch. Like our body, we soothe ourselves. When we hit our parts of the body, let's say you hit your knee or your elbow, naturally the other hand is going to go and kind of like rub that place. That's the soothing. That's the kind of soothing. So, it can be just kind of like rubbing the chest, or even gently tapping with a fist. And everybody will have their own action of soothing. So that is a practice to explore, right? And then just holding that space, and in that softening, noticing, so well, what could I do differently next time?
Mm,
Right? Like,
mhm.
what am I learning from this? What is the message that is coming up? And then through that, getting motivation to actually act in a different way, rather than from the sense of judgment and anger, which is most often bringing others into the whirlpool of conflict, right? So that
Yeah.
would be the three basic elements that we then in the practice we play with it in different ways. There are different practices that can go in this kind of sequence. Yeah.
Wow, I think that's cool because the way you explain how one should approach, where when they're like when they're forced into that scenario, I think that makes it all the more accessible to people. And I'm sure a lot of people listening to this right now would sort of relate to the fact that um, it is also something which is very um, contagious, right? So if there is this one person who has self compassion towards himself, and naturally then compassion as well, the whole room can somewhat feel it. So I'm a believer that this concept of self compassion is very contagious. So I want to tap into that culture shift question, lastly, because I know a lot of leaders, or you talk about communities, are shifting, or even workplaces, right? Because leaders are practicing it. So what are the signs, um uh, I mean, a workplace or community is shifting because leaders are practicing it?
That's a great question. It's not easy to practice alone. And we depend on leaders a lot, right? Like we ask of leaders to be that so that we can influence others. It is, I would say, the workplace that is going to really have this culture is from those when we have maybe more than one person, right? Then it's going to be really felt. Um,
Yeah.
but when like the sign, and you can just think of this, like imagine a leader who is constantly criticizing and blaming and pointing out at mistakes and never recognizing any effort. And even just mentioning that, you can imagine what kind of culture in a team that could be, or in your organization. And then on the other side, the leader who is like recognizing efforts, but also having um, boundaries, and also bringing the elements of, hey, I know you're going through a difficult time in your life, and we need to do this. So how can we think about this together, right? Having conversations, and you say about something, the charisma of the leader is going to be completely different. People will just naturally feel safe. They will feel safe to show their humanity. And it's also leaders who are feeling safe to show their own humanity, to say, hey, I'm going through a difficult time in my life at the moment, and I'm my capacity to kind of like listen is a little bit lower today than usually, right? I mean, people can celebrate this kind of language, and realize that it's okay. It's okay that sometimes we are not on the top of the performing capacity as we would think that it is, that we have to, right? Depression, for example, doesn't mean that we are weak. It means that we've been trying to be strong for too long, and just not giving ourselves space to say, hey, like there are times that when I'm just having difficulties. So this is one sign that, and again, maybe people will not be even able to name it, but they will definitely know that the leader is doing something different when they're using compassionate approach and self-compassion. Those leaders who use self-compassion as their own practice, they can regulate themselves much faster. They will be able to hold difficult times that are happening in a team, in the organization, in a different way as well. So their self-care capacity is also much. Resilience as well is obvious.
Yeah.
So when the practice is
Mm.
genuine, yeah.
Yeah. And since I know that tend to trust what they can practice and watch compound in real life. Not just what sounds good in theory, right? And after having this conversation with you, I think that was totally very practical and insightful about what you shared. And honestly, my biggest takeaway from this conversation has been that leadership is something that gets lighter when it gets more embodied. I think because it isn't about something you say. It's more the less. Sorry. Yeah, the more about what you what you're bringing. What value are you bringing into a room? How you pause, how you react, right? How you respond to each other, and I think that's also when accountability stops feeling threatening, and starts feeling more doable. So, thank you, for bringing this so well and practically to them. I really appreciate how you're not just asking leaders to become someone else.
Thank you. Thank you, Sayan. I also want to say that while, yes, more and more leaders are practicing, also something to be very aware of. At times, criticism can show as giving much faster response, or in a short term, people can respond to criticism with a little bit more kind of like action, right? Adrenaline comes up, um, and it's not that we can't use criticism. There is a benefit to criticism as well,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
But using the approach, the practice of self-compassion and compassionate approach to leadership is much more sustainable, because what breaks teams and organizations is when difficult times start happening, when people feel not safe. And then all investment in this kind of approach will really show and provide the space for rejuvenation and resilience of the whole team. So I really believe
Mhm.
this is possible. And thank you for helping
Yeah, totally.
message forward. Yes. Mhm.
Absolutely. Well, thank you to you as well, Dalinda. This was really a very honest and grounding conversation, besides it being very practical and insightful as well. So before, we come towards the end of this episode, um, I just want to know, like, for everyone who's listening to this right now, where can they reach you at?
Yes, thank you for sharing that. So, the best way is to reach me on the website. Through the website, there's a way to connect with me. It's beijingmindfulnessacademy.com or bmcacademy.com. And I love to connect with people on one-on-one conversation. It's the place where people can reach out, and if they would want to be trained in how to bring that mind, body, and heart presence into their leadership through coaching, because coaching, what it brings also is really that focus on action. After that, sitting still and going into awareness, coaching is very helpful
Mm.
to bring kind of like the action forward. Um, so I would love to connect. Just send a message there and schedule a call through my calendar, and I'm happy to answer any questions or to support anyone who might be curious about these techniques, or struggling or needing one-on-one attention for their personal leadership.
Amazing, amazing doing that. And yeah, I recommend you to check out her website as well. And with that, we hit today's mark on this episode. And guys, honestly, if you're listening and you're thinking, well, okay, it's kind of a cool concept, but I'm not that kind of a guy. I'm going to challenge you with a quick script. Um, so three things. First, I want you to name it. For example, this is a XYZ moment, right? Then I want you to normalize it. And lastly, I want you to support it. Um, and what I mean by that is, what do I need to do right now to respond with respect? Just that thing mentally, right? No dramatic journaling required, just a new default response. And I want you to watch what changes. This has been Mind Over Masculinity with me, Sayan, and my guest, Dalida Turkovich. If this episode gave you a new lens on leadership and inner strength, send it to that one person who leads under pressure. Could be a manager, founder, maybe even your friend. Because the truth is, self compassion is not just a private practice, it's a culture strategy. And hey, if you're building a life where masculinity includes emotional skills, presence, and real resilience, you're in the right place. Catch you in the next one.